Hello, it's me again. Um, I'm probably in dappled sunlight right now because it's sunny. Hopefully you can see me, and hopefully this time I remember to look directly in the camera because last time my head kind of kept going down. But anyway, hello. Welcome to the third of these videos. I'm using a Hawthorne to kind of hi to kind of support this, but I mostly have to hold it. Anyway, my videography skills are not necessarily the best, but I hope you're well, and thanks for checking out this third video. So, COVID's still happening, so that's pretty wild, I think, for everybody. It's funny. I've had a really great time. I'm in a great situation with a great man. I get to see places like this whenever I want. It's kind of wearing on me not to get to see humanity, though. It's weird. Yeah, I miss humans, but I've always kind of liked humans, I guess. So speaking of humans and society and civilization and stuff, I was thinking this week about talking about this weird thing I've kind of noticed. Maybe some of you already know this. I've been kind of working with a therapist slash life coach sort of person. He's a tantric therapist, which is pretty cool. Definitely consider checking it out. That kind of work, or even his work. It's great. But a lot has kind of happened to, like, in my life, I guess, in general, but more so in the last 3 months of kind of trying to learn to undo certain beliefs or certain things that just kind of hold you back. And you know, I'd like to be a little cautious with saying this. First of all, systemic, institutional, society-wide, you know, privilege and oppression absolutely exist, and those exist regardless of what society you're in. They're in France, where I was living for a while. It's there's a lot of it, but it's based on different things than it is in the United States. In Luxembourg, it's the same way. In Germany, and pretty much everywhere in the world. But this kind of relates to civilization a little bit. So, there's the idea that people are kind of divided into classes. I'm a Marxist, so I kind of see that there's two classes. There's the capitalist class and the worker class. But there's actually lots of different classes, and while a lot of that is like kind of systematic, society kind of puts you into those classes depending on what you were born with, whether you had access to wealth or anything else like that. The way civilization does that, the way that is civilized into you, is not always material. A lot of it is just on beliefs. So you probably also know this. I grew up in abject poverty. I was born in Appalachia in southeast Ohio, where we lived. We were considered rich because I had two pairs of shoes, one pair of shoes for the summer and one pair of shoes for the winter. We had an open sewer in our backyard. It was a very cold house, and we burned coal, which we didn't have a coal stove for it. We had a wood stove, so the walls were black all of the time from the coal dust. A truck came by every like the beginning of each month to drop off food because we didn't have any food and we qualified for government aid. That was a pretty epic life, pretty difficult life, and there's always this sense where I've never kind of escaped it. Although I've done so much more with my life now than I guess what it seemed like a Appalachian kid living in a coal-fired, leaky hut basically was going to become. But a lot of so that was the background, but a lot of things from that I kind of learned, like, oh, you don't get certain things, and you don't get to ask for certain things. You should never ask for certain things because you're not going to get it. That was material, but that was also emotional. Like, I had a very bad family situation with an abusive father and a schizophrenic mother. So oftentimes it was, you don't ask for love, don't ask for a hug, don't ask for anything. You're not going to get it. And that's kind of stuck with me, you know, my entire life. And a lot of it has changed, but a lot of it is kind of still there. And one thing I've been noticing, because I'm in a relationship with a dude who grew up in kind of the opposite circumstances, not just not just with wealth, which he did grow up doing quite well, from family who had done quite well, whose grandparents had done quite well. If you go back to his ancestry, like, everybody had done quite well. So there was never a question of, oh, we're not the sort of people who get money. But also, he grew up with a lot of love too. A very caring mother, a very caring father, very caring extended family. And so it's interesting watching his life, and the way he interacts with certain things in our relationship or just in life in general. And the thing that I've noticed that he never says is, oh, that's not for me. He never says, oh, that's not the sort of thing that I can do. Instead, it's always like, well, of course I can do it. The question is, do I want to? And that's kind of a radical difference from my life. It's always been a question of, for me, like, oh, well, there is no question. That's not something I get. That's not something I'll ever have. That's not something I should ever even let myself think that I can have. And if you look at the way that fits kind of in, let's say, American society, you have entire classes and entire races of people who are shunted into that kind of belief. The best example being black folk or indigenous folk. They grew up poor. Their parents were poor. Their grandparents were poor. Their great grandparents were slaves. They've always been taught all down the line, like, hey, you don't get anything. In fact, the best that you can ever hope is to have a kind master. And it takes generations to kind of break that. I have some friends who still struggle with that all of the time. It's the same way with other, poor white people who have come from poor whites. Poverty kind of keeps cascading. But so do, other things like the fear that you have of, I've got Jewish friends who their kind of ancestral trauma is really intense. Some of them just don't ever talk about how they're Jewish, ever. Online, to their friends, nothing. So that's kind of how classes, how oppression sort of maintains itself. Society does that. Like, we do that to each other. The rich do that to the poor. Bosses do that to their workers. Governments do that to their citizens. You constantly are shunted into lower classes because you believe that you are not the sort of person who can get that. And maybe your own experiences, you've seen, oh, I can't get that. My mom didn't get that. My grandmother didn't get that, etc. And breaking that pattern is really difficult. For example, like, so the man I'm with, I've got bad teeth. Maybe you've noticed that. I mean, they're not too bad, but they're actually kind of bad. And I don't mean cosmetically. I mean, I've got, there are some foods I cannot always eat because of how bad my teeth are. And, I could never afford to go to a dentist, never afford to get them straightened. Part of the problems I have right now is the teeth have cracked because, because they were like too close to each other. And, I just kind of mentioned, like, yeah, I've got bad teeth. And he's like, oh, I'll fix them for you. Well, not him personally, but he's like, I could pay for that for you. I'm like, no, why? And he's like, well, I mean, what are you going to do otherwise? Like, you can't afford to do it. You deserve good teeth. If you can't eat, that's a problem. I'm like, yeah, but no, that's not something I can do. And he's like, well, that's why I've offered to help you pay for that. And the kind of crisis I had around that was like, whoa, like, how dare he offer me something that, like, I'm not supposed to have? And then I stopped and realized, wait, I'm not supposed to have, I can't have, all of that. That's just in my head. That's what I've learned my entire life because of, well, the way my family learns, the way my grandparents learned, etc. And if you look at that kind of on a very large scale, you kind of see that, you know, I definitely don't want to even slightly stray into the positive thinking white light territory where if like you just think the right thoughts, you'll get it. But I will say if you do the work of fighting the bad thoughts that weren't yours, the beliefs that were foisted on you, that were enforced, disciplined, civilized into you, you know, a lot more kind of opens up. And on a society-wide level or a nation-wide level, you can see this difference in the way the French look at socialized healthcare, stuff like that, and the way that Americans do. You know, a lot of Americans, more and more, are kind of like, yeah, you know, maybe we could have that. But if you ask the French, they're like, well, of course we can fucking have that. We deserve that. And that mild difference, yeah, no, that's what we get, versus the United States, like, oh, I don't know if we can afford that. You know, there's no basis to really either of those beliefs. It's just a question of how you look at it. Like, the French say, yeah, we deserve that, and we have it, and we're going to keep it. Americans have never gotten it, and so a lot of them, you know, like me, I never had dental care. So the idea that I could have that is just, whew, really? No, I don't think it's going to work. So we kind of stop asking for things. We kind of stop demanding the things that we deserve because we don't think we can. And deserving something is, you know, really, it's just a belief. It's just, you know, do poor people in America deserve to have health care? Well, that's a belief. I believe they do. You know, do like single women with children have the right to have help for their children? Well, I believe they do. And it's interesting that it comes down to just belief. There's really no logic behind it. It's just a question of how we frame it and what values we decide to kind of affirm in it. You know, of course, believing that you're going to be a billionaire or whatever isn't going to make you a billionaire. And believing that racism is going away isn't going to make racism go away. These things have to happen on a society-wide level. But yeah, I've been thinking about how that kind of, you know, in my life personally, and the way that, you know, I guess there's another thing. I'll give you another shot or two of where I'm sitting. It's not very far from where I was sitting last time. In fact, I can kind of show you. There's the, well, maybe you can see it. That's where that waterfall starts on the other side. But, you know, I have access to this because I'm here. And I know lots of people just don't have access to this sort of thing. You know, it's all open land. You know, there's barbed wire, but you can go under the barbed wire. It's no problem. There's no one to kind of tell you no, because the idea is, you know, nature is for all here. Whereas in the United States, oftentimes you have to drive to nature. If you're living in a city and you're poor, you don't get access to that. And I kind of wonder what would happen if we started saying that we deserve that we deserve more nature. And also, you know, we deserve to have more nature than what we have right now. And not just access, but like, oh, no, you know, this deserves to live. Like, you know, these forests deserve to grow, not to be cut down. Again, those are just beliefs. You know, you can't. A lot of times I think, you know, leftists especially try to rationalize it by like, well, you know, if you have more forests, then people will be healthier. But no, you don't need to do that. It's just a question of belief. You know, no, we need more forests. We need more nature. We need more access to that. Everyone needs access to this. These things deserve to live, to exist. Anyway, so I hope that was a good video. I'm a little sun-drenched right now. I was in the sun for a good hour, so I'm a little hazy feeling. And I'm going to have to find a way to get through this blackthorn. The first time, it grabbed my beard. I don't know. Well, it's not too bad, but it grabbed my beard and just kind of pulled as I was going. So this will be fun. I won't take a video of that, though, because I'll probably drop the phone. Anyway, thanks again for all of your support. I deeply appreciate it, and I hope you are well, and I hope you get a chance to go see some nature somehow, because you deserve it. Okay? All right. Bye.